KZ Guy 2 here at NoNonsenseKnowHow, and today I want to give you some quick tips and instructions on how to replace the starter motor in this 2008 Toyota Tundra behind me. Like usual, I'll try and keep this real fast pace, and I'll also plug in links down below for everything I use in the video. So give it a thumbs up if it helps out, and here we go. Okay, so I'm working on a car lift, which of course makes this job much easier, and I'm using air tools, but you could definitely accomplish this job at home. Now the starter itself is located on the passenger side just below the exhaust manifold, and Toyota actually recommends that you remove the exhaust manifold and catalytic converter to do this job, so they call for 5.8 hours of labor. But if you look online, you can see plenty of guys do this without doing so. So let's run right through those steps you're going to have to take. First thing, remove the negative terminal from the battery. That's a 10mm on there. It's very important that you don't skip that step because there is a positive cable coming from the battery to the starter motor, and that would be live if you didn't disconnect the battery, so that wouldn't be good. Next, come over on your passenger side and remove the 10mm bolt for holding your dipstick tube on. That's right there. Remove that, and then we'll move down below. Next, get your vehicle safely jacked up. Remove the 5 21mm lug nuts. Take the wheel off. And then in the wheel well, you can remove the clips on the tops of these rubber flaps. They look like this, and I just used this clip tool here to remove them. You got a couple on this side as well. Now on this exhaust manifold heat cover, remove the 3 10mm bolts holding it on. You got 2 there, and 1 up on the front right there. Now I'm gonna take this cable out of my way by pulling up on that, sliding that up, tie that up out of the way. And then I sprayed some rust penetrant on this dipstick tube, wiggled it back and forth, and was able to get that out of there. On the bottom, you have an O-ring there, so make sure you clean that up real good before putting that back in. And with that off, I was able to finagle the top cover out the bottom. Next, take the 2 10mm bolts off of this starter heat shield, and you have 1 more up top, which it's basically right between this pipe here. So I'm going to try dropping the starter down first though, maybe that'll get it a little bit more accessible. So remove those 2 starter bolts from the back side. You got a 14mm here and a 14mm right there above it. I also removed the 12mm from my cooler lines here to get a little bit of play out of those. That one you can get with an extension. It sits right there, bolting onto the bell housing. Here's a view of that bottom bolt holding the starter cover on. It's right there, 10mm, so you can get that with a flat ratcheting wrench or whatever works for you. I used this gear wrench, 10mm ratcheting, and then that cover slides out of there, but I'd be lying to you if I told you it was easy. I had to finagle this thing pretty good to get it off there. Luckily it's made out of this really malleable aluminum and easy to work with or bend back if you need to. Okay, now get your battery cable off the back. Underneath this little cover here, you got what looks like a 12mm and then 1 electrical connection. Looks just like this. You just push in on that and that will release. Oh boy, look at that. Mine just broke by pushing it a little bit. All right, so yours might be dry from age and heat. Don't worry though, when you put that back on, just put a dab of silicone, not on the inside of it, but after you slip it on, just a dab over the top, some Right Stuff or any silicone, and that will hold that on there for life. I've done it for over 10 years, never been a problem. When these plastic connectors get old, they get brittle. So get those off of there, and then also remove the battery cable from this little tower here. And slide that and pull this off, or remove the whole bracket itself there with that 10mm where my finger is right there. Also looks like I'll have to get these cooler lines out of the way, so I will just kink these off with a pair of pliers, or you can plug them off with something, and then get these up out of the way and slide that starter right through this hole. Just use some slip joint pliers to get those clamps off. A little bit of coolant will come out if you block those off still, and if you don't have pliers like this, just make sure to plug these immediately after taking them off, unless you want to get showered in coolant. And then you have enough room to squeeze this thing out of here. But I will warn you, it's still tight. There it is. Might have been easier to just remove the exhaust manifold. I'm not sure. Your next step is going to be comparing the new starter to the old one, and I highly suggest going with a factory starter motor if this is your own vehicle. Here's the part number for you. case you want to look one of those up. I'll also try and plug a link in down below to a starter for this. But if you are going to be using an aftermarket one, definitely hook a battery up to this, positive here, negative to the case, and then bridge a little 12-volt lead to that little tab in there, and make sure this thing at least sounds okay and works before you go bolting it in there. At least that's my opinion. I think we're running pretty long on time here, so I am gonna cut this video short, and I'm not gonna show you how to put it in. I know a lot of guys hate that, but it literally is the reverse of removal. Just follow those exact steps. You might be tempted to leave one or two of these covers out of there, but I don't recommend doing that because you don't want excessive heat to destroy your new starter. So get all that back in there, bolt everything back together. Don't forget to put your dipstick tube in there. Make sure to clean that O-ring out. And you shouldn't really have to top your coolant back off since only like a half a cup actually came out of this thing. You'll be okay. Just check the level when you're done. One other tip for you, I do recommend some dielectric grease inside this connection. And again, when you slip that connector in there, just dab a little bit of silicone on the outside if your little tab is broken like mine is. And then I recommend after you put the cables on here, take some grease of any type, wheel bearing grease, and just rub it all over these just to prevent corrosion. Because sometimes, especially with these aftermarket ones, these like to get corroded and whatnot. So good idea to do that. And there you go. That should be everything you need to know on how to get this starter out and back in. If there's any updates or anything else I think of, I will make sure to plug that in down below in the description for you, so make sure to check for that. Of course, give this video a thumbs up. Greatly appreciate that kind of thing, and consider subscribing and ringing the bell on my channel. Appreciate all that as well. Till next time, this is KZ Guy 2 here, No Nonsense Know How, and I'll see you later.